balance, I think, we just had a long phone call with them, of traditional and new social media types of, I just think you guys really coalesce it well in your department. If you don't mind talking about it a little with everyone. Or what your philosophy is of how you've been blending the two.
Get her done.
Get through the noise and the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you said, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Yeah.
and you know, we want to be in the same. We want to be in the sandbox playing, maybe not at at the top of the pile, but we do work really hard to blend both the new and the traditional. We have a lot of contacts
Right.
from back in the day.
Right.
And we want to take care of them and welcome new people into our sandbox.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because those old contacts are just so wonderful. When I was doing that 16 bookstore tour, obviously I didn't have any wiggle room in the schedule. And Denver happened to be Friday of Halloween weekend. And Charles, who I've known 95 years, said, "Oh, Alice, we just don't do Friday of Halloween. But for you, I'll do it." That's, so you don't want to lose those
No.
people.
We don't.
Yeah.
Was that chatter cover?
Yeah.
We hear a lot about the challenges. What makes you feel optimistic about prospects for doing publicity?
I wish I could tell you, Bridget. I don't know. I
Well, you
am.
keep doing it, so what
I
makes
know.
you keep doing it?
And one of my, I don't know if this person was just, quote, just a student or whether they were a client, but they wrote to me recently and they said what they liked was that I was realistic and I was optimistic. And that is indeed the way I work, that I always have hopes that this is going to work, and yet, just like all of us, this didn't work, well, what new thing can we try? So, I don't know, I'm just happy, optimist.
Just an optimist.
I feel optimistic because I feel like as publicists, we're mostly storytellers. We're just retelling the story of the author. And so no matter how that story comes out through technology or that type of thing, we're sort of the megaphone of the story. And so when you find that story, whether it's the author, the book, or the topic, you become so passionate. And so we all love stories, whether it's movies or books or TV shows, or we're all so story oriented. And so I think of myself as more of a storyteller. And great stories will come. It's just a matter of how we're going to get it out there.
And I also always feel that I'm at the forefront of what's going on in the world, whether it's the culture, whether it's the news, whether, that I have a window onto the future.
Cutting edge.
The cutting edge, yeah. Even though I know about Kate's book and it's about World War II, so you can't say that's cutting edge. But, she has a story that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in.
I think to Kate's point, also what's fun is being detective. When you talk about the author questionnaire, I agree. I think it's total gold mine. If the author takes the time to thoroughly complete it and helps in the process.
They are the expert. You have to get in their head.
You're always wondering, when you send a book out, how do you get the attention when someone a reviewer has a stack of books?
Right.
I went into, this was years ago, Pat Holt in Alex Madrigal's office, and it was kind of frightening because the whole office was stacked floor to ceiling with books. And so I started this working on design books, where if I had books from all over the country, if I was sending to the Chicago Tribune, I would flag this requires that they let me send them myself, but I put little flags on a note that says I have flagged the Chicago home, and then I'd make I'm kind of a geography nerd, so I'd make all these lists for myself of the small paper there, the larger paper, and go geographically in and geographically go out, and then I started making databases of all of the areas, and it became kind of an obsession, and it takes a little too long. It's ridiculous, but you can get the attention, and then I put a post-it on the front that says, hi, here's a blah, 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 see pages, and then I started outlining what was interesting about different books for an editor who did small space design and had a kitchen book. So for small space design, I went through and I made a database about all this small kitchen, all the little nooks and cranny book in the book, or places where they had used small space, or it became so much fun.
How many lists do you have now?
How many
Lists overall of time, media lists,
You mean different genres? Or?
everything. I would have to say
They
hundreds
just
and
go on and
hundreds
on.
of
I don't even know
Yeah.
how I
I
find
can't
it.
even keep track.
Yeah.
I'm
You know, it
sure.
has to be coded. So, it's hard for me to even keep up with my coding because
Right.
design might also be home, and it might be home and garden, and it might be the book editor at a certain paper might be interested in design, and
But
It's
that's what I
overwhelming.
say by traditional publicists.
that's
They're really,
traditional. Yeah.
really working what is in that book. In Publishers Weekly, I don't know what the actual date was, but they did a military and war feature. And so we were supposed to send in something. And so I was sending in a debut book of a debut publisher. And so what I did was I literally underlined in the thing, yes, I gave them much more than they asked for, but it was all, just like, this is underlined, this is the most important thing, and this is why, and it got in.
I put stickers on my mailing labels sometimes, like a new January great article with a big bright sticker on the end of it.
Yeah, whatever works and what you can do. Some people, what Sam's talking about, they think, oh, I can't do that. But maybe they like the sticker
And
idea.
you try something new all the time.
Right.
You have to be flexible and creative
Absolutely.
and just be willing to try anything new that's
Yeah,
fun and exciting. It has to be.
yeah, for the hate mail that you get, take it to AP.
More and more, it seems like there needs to be a local angle. So if you pour through the book looking through local angles, and you pour through the author questionnaire, and of course, if our authors go somewhere, then that really
Critical.
is critical.
Yeah.
And that can be really impacted by the social media because it's more of a community. You can find that, be hashtag Portland or that you can find places that are.
Well, even what section of Portland,
Right.
whether it's southwest or northeast,
I had a book called Kitchen Literacy about how we got to the place where we don't know what's in our food, and it was by an environmental historian, and she lives in Oregon, and she went up to Bellingham, and local is so important that sometimes the editor at Bellingham paper,
Carol.
Weekly,
Yeah.
Christian Martin, wrote the most thoughtful review. A lot of times the people at Weeklies are so, I've started not overlooking the smaller papers because a lot of times they're freelance writers who are so very good, and he wrote a beautiful piece.
Well, nowadays too, the freelance writer can be writing. I have a guy in San Jose who writes for the Atlantic, the New Yorker, and the New York Times. And so when they email you and they're just like, "Oh, I'm a freelancer," you're pleased to find out who they write for and where they have their pieces placed. Because I think that's the whole thing. I have a big list of freelancers and keep track of where they write for because we got one. Jesse Eisinger worked for a small independent media. Progressive outlet, he ended up writing a huge piece that got picked up by the New York Times and then just went huge.
Yeah.
And it was like, you don't know. Sometimes the freelancers are the best or the smaller people.
Another
They
tried
also
and
write
true,
online.
Sam Levinson, you're all too young to probably remember who he was. Wonderful comedian, wonderful human being. And he was the one who taught me about thank you notes. Now, of course, my mother did. Bread and butter letters and so forth. But he always sent a thank you note, and I have my authors send that thank you note. They don't have to be beautiful stationery, and I do it all the time. If I get a review, I just make a Xerox of it, and my stationery is green and white, so I sign with green ink. And I just say, thanks so much, for whatever is appropriate. And believe me, that is known. David Streitfeld, who's writing for the New York Times, he's here. And when he was at the Washington Post and doing his column in the book review, I didn't even have to sign my name. He knew the green ink.
I send out Christmas cards to the editors. I really don't send it as the reviews come out, but I have sent out hundreds of Christmas cards to try to remember to say thank you for the review in so-and-so. And one of my publishers, an editor from one of my clients, was presenting a book to a magazine, and it was a Christmas card for me there. And I don't know how often that would help, but I was just starting to think that was maybe too much trouble, but perhaps not.
It's really remembered.
Well, I will keep the email thread. So if I'm in contact with a certain editor over years, I will still use the original email thread so they can see all the points of contact that we've had, and they'll remember that we have an ongoing relationship because they deal with so many people. So the same New York trip people last year, I'm using the same email thread to pitch them this year to come out there and visit them, so they know they know me.
We're in a people business.
Just to emphasize the people part, my first publicist back in 1992, 20 years ago, she romanced article writer in Newsweek. She wrote handwritten notes every week about what was so good about the book, and ended up with a whole page in there with my book talked about. And Newsweek said, Newsweek, not quoting anybody, said groundbreaking and better written than most popular psychology. So we can put that on all the book covers. But that all came from those weekly notes that she hand wrote. She was really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Any other comments, questions?
What are you reading and enjoying?
What am I reading?
Yeah.
I'm reading The Hotel at the Corner of Bitter and Sweet.
Wow, that sounds good.
It is. It's a wonderful novel by Jamie Ford. It takes place in Seattle in 1942 and 1986, and it's about the relocation of the Japanese Americans. But it's a love story. It's a coming of age. It's wonderful. And lots of history. Lots of history in it. Yeah. Oh, and it's a great cover, too. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.